I haven't seen too much of the Denny that like made people hate him. I just know the Denny that like wins races, podcasts, and sues NASCAR, and so I think he's really cool.
All right, welcome to Left Turn Right Hooks, episode number 33 here, and something new for the small channel here. I've got Daniel Cespedes joining me. Daniel and I have talked over Twitter, X, whichever you prefer to call it. I still call it Twitter, so I'll probably say Twitter a million times here. But so it's Dan and Daniel here. So that's just fun. You know, us namesakes, we have to stick together. So really just really looking forward to this. It's great to have you on the pod, Daniel. Thanks for coming. I'm growing my channel. You're kind of growing what you do, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to use some of your graphics in some of my NASCAR podcasts, so I really appreciate that. So it's great to have you on.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me too. It's been cool. Like, I appreciate the support you've given me on my page, and I like what you do too, Sue. So cool that we can chat.
Yeah, well, and thank you. I've got a little few different types of questions kind of prep that we'll go through. Others might come up as we talk. I definitely can't wait to hear kind of what you got going on in the NASCAR world. And
Mhm.
we got to hit the hot topics, you know, SVG stuff, playoff stuff, what everybody's always talking about. We'll stay away
Of
from the
course.
lawsuit. I'll promise that we'll stay away from the lawsuit. We'll let the
Yeah.
big big dogs, the journalism, the Pockrasses, the Jeff Glucks, Bianchis. We'll let them stick with that stuff.
Yeah.
We'll just give our opinion on the other stuff. That's really deep. So I've actually like tried to do a couple podcasts on that, and I'm just like, I don't feel
It's
confident in
so
this,
hard. Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't want to say something wrong. You'd be like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? I mean, I'm small enough, nobody would probably notice, but it'd be the one time that it's like, what are you talking about? So, but
No, I
anyway,
get you. I feel like I've read every tweet, every update about that lawsuit, and I still don't really know what's happening. I don't know what the outcome is supposed to be. I get
yeah,
you. It's a mess. So
I'll say,
definitely better we stay away from that one. Yeah.
yeah, I will say Bob is probably, you know, is probably one of the best resources. He keeps that running tab. I mean, Bianchi and
Yeah.
Gluck did too, but I feel like, you know, Bob's kind of almost like that go-to of the way he just tracks stuff and everything. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll keep that to the big guys. Um, let's dive in. I'm kind of really curious about your history. You know, kind of you and NASCAR. So what really got you into NASCAR?
So I'm a much newer fan for sure. I got into NASCAR in 2022 because I applied for the NASCAR internship during my junior year of college, and so the application was due in like December, and I knew nothing about NASCAR at the time, frankly. And after I applied, I figured I might as well at least kind of get comfortable with the sport a little bit before, if I get an interview, I should kind of know what's going on. So the first race I watched was actually the Clash at the Coliseum,
Nice.
which was really cool. And then, followed up from there with the Daytona 500 and everything moving forward. And then I was fortunate enough to earn the spot in the internship, and so I lived in Charlotte that summer. As part of
Awesome.
the orientation, they brought us out to the 2022 Coke 600. And
Nice.
I think that was the big selling point for me. Just having pit access, being able to walk around, being able to be behind the pits. I feel like it's what everyone says. It's not until you actually feel those cars roar that you can actually gain an appreciation for what happens on track. And on top of that, it was an all timer. Like, I got very lucky with my first race, so got hooked from there. When I first watched the Clash, seeing Daniel Suarez was like something super surprising for me. I didn't know that a namesake, and then also like someone also like a Mexican background that was cool. Coke 600, he led some laps. He looked really good until he got caught in that wreck that also flipped Buescher.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a month later, during Sonoma, he went out and won his first race. So it all was just kind of a perfect storm for me to get bought into the sport. And ever since then, I've been following pretty closely.
That's awesome, and you got right in before all this next gen kart stuff too. Then that's got to be kind of an interesting adjustment.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, the 2022 was like the first like next gen season, but it was like still entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the chaos of it. I think it was like 23, 24 that people started getting tired of it.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting. Like, I didn't watch the Gen 6 in real time, so like I've only been around for the next gen era.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah. I actually wasn't really watching a lot during the Gen 6 era either. I kind of remember the car tomorrow, then just other things. I just wasn't keeping up on the sport a lot. And but yeah, no, it's yeah, Coke 600 is an experience. We were talking about that a
Yeah.
little bit before we started. I did my first Coke 600 this year with my dad, and it's if you don't mind, and I feel like the true NASCAR fans don't mind that long of a race. You know, the
Yeah.
really hardcore ones, like
That's
seeing
the
that in
beauty of
person
that.
is, yeah, seeing in person that is just, something else. It really is. Charlotte's a great track. We just had the
Yeah.
Roval. We want back the oval, right?
Yeah.
Bring back the oval.
No,
um,
I know it's time, but oh well.
yeah. So being kind of a newer fan to NASCAR, are there any drivers that kind of help outside of like Suarez? I think it's really cool that you mentioned Daniel Suarez. Is
Yeah.
there any other drivers that really helped you pull in, or that you kind of find yourself cheering for maybe a little more than other guys?
Yeah. I think still I haven't gotten to the point where I have like a diehard like this driver's finish affects my perception of the race kind of point. But I like the Trackhouse guys, like I said, 2022, like following Suarez. And then that was the same year that Chastain had the Hail Melon, so that was like really cool.
Yep.
They just had a lot going for them that year. I also went to the inaugural Chicago race,
Oh, nice.
which being from Chicago, SVG won that one. So Trackhouse has always kind of found its way to entertain me a little bit. So I like those guys. Denny won the Coke 600, and it's funny, we were talking about this too. Like I've only been watching him since the next gen era, so I haven't seen too much of the Denny that like made people hate him. I just know the Denny that like wins races, podcasts, and sues NASCAR, and so I think he's really cool. So yeah, I like Denny. Yeah, I don't think there's really beyond that, and being someone who like roots for Denny, I like the 2311 guys as well. Like I think Tyler Reddick is like ridiculously talented. Bubba
Mhm.
Wallace is like super cool.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think there's a handful of guys that I like, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's great that we can see teams like Trackhouse and 2311 really start to come into their own. 2311 the
Yeah.
last couple of years, but Trackhouse especially this year, I feel like Chastain's a little bit different this year. I think he's gotten past that point to where we're waiting for Hostvar to get to in the next couple of years, hopefully. Of like he's
Mhm.
kind of hit that maturity outside of hitting Hamlin the other
Yeah,
day.
last week, yeah.
But I feel like he's kind of gotten to that, it's like a little bit more respect of a driver. Made the playoffs with winning the Coke 600 this year.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see him Trackhouse, like you said, do well. I think everybody cheers for like the big teams, the big organizations. So it's like,
Yeah.
the fandom I think can actually really be grown with Trackhouse, with Front Row, with 2311. And well, two of those teams may not exist next year,
Yeah,
but we
fingers
aren't going
crossed.
there.
Yeah, we'll see. No, yeah, I agree. I feel like all those three teams you mentioned are just so easy to root for the most part. I think Ross has his moments where I'm like, all right, I get it if he's making you a little mad. But no, yeah, I think great programs. And especially in this era, like where we have the big three kind of reestablished again now that
Yeah.
everyone's got into like the next gen, into their next gen groove. It's been really interesting. To have those races where like Ross wins the Coke 600. You've got SVG dominating at the ovals, or at the not the ovals, the opposite at the road courses.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the Roval and then I misspoke, but yeah, they're fun teams to root for, and it's nice to see them win every now and then.
Yeah. Well, and I had actually this later, but I have to ask this now since you brought up SVG. We're talking about Trackhouse. Is SVG the greatest road course driver we've ever seen?
It's hard to say. Like I said, I'm newer, so like I know I didn't see like Jeff Gordon and like Chase Elliott in their heyday in the moment, but I think it's hard to argue. I mean, I think the thing with Jeff Gordon is that he was racing at a time where the cars were so different. I
Mhm.
think being in a Hendrick car was a much bigger advantage than it is today. And to see SVG not only win once or twice, but I think three of his last four wins have been by over 10 seconds on road courses.
Yeah.
In a track house car, like that's not nothing. He has half the starts as everyone else.
Mhm.
Whether he is or isn't, like it's not a hill I'm going to die on, but I think there's a very, very strong argument to be made. I think if he has the same type of season next year on the road courses, I mean, you got to crown him.
Yeah.
It just, yeah,
I think he's right there. I think when you look at the streak of road courses wins, obviously Gordon didn't have to race more than two a year. Um, but I think Stewart is kind of needs to be belong in that conversation because Stewart can literally drive anything. He has.
yeah,
I mean, he's doing NHRA stuff now. So like, I think Stewart belongs in that conversation. But I mean, if SVG isn't one, he's one B, one C. Like he's
exactly.
or 1D if you want to, again, throw Chase in there.
He's on the podium by now.
Yes,
Yeah, I think
definitely.
he's definitely making a good case for himself. So we'll see if he can keep it up next year. It's going to be hard to keep defending the Gordons of the world.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned the internship, and I wanted to kind of talk about how you kind of got into like your niche that you have with the graphics. Did that internship really help kind of really help pique your interest in like the journalism side of NASCAR a little bit?
Um, yes and no. I'd say that so I did an analytics internship with a sports betting team, and that's kind of my background now. I work as a data analyst, and I like to post NASCAR analytics on Twitter, as you've seen. Um, I don't. It's interesting. I don't really consider myself like a journalist of any sort. Like I think, like I post things pertinent to what's happening from time to time, but I think like Gluck and Bianchi are like the journalists, and I'm just a guy with a little hobby on the side.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, as far as how I found this like niche of posting visualizations on Twitter, when I was applying for jobs after graduating college, I kind of saw it as a good way to just practice. Like in some classes that I took projects where after I did the internship, I was like, oh, let me try to visualize like average start versus average finish in like NASCAR and then like F1, just really easy projects like that. And that's when I started working with NASCAR data. And so when I started thinking about applying for jobs, I was like, let me just start posting them on Twitter as kind of a way to show like my interest in this, not only as a career path, but just something that I think is fun and that I genuinely enjoy. And because I've seen people do it for like football and soccer, but I hadn't really
hmm
seen many people do it for NASCAR. So I just started posting them, just tweeting them out into the void and hoping that one day a recruiter would see that and be like, oh, okay, this kid's doing his best. And then little by little, some people stumbled upon my work and then ended up liking it. And it just kind of took off from there. And so I've just been doing it as a hobby for the last, I guess it's been almost 2 years now. I started beginning of last season. So yeah, almost 2 years.
that's awesome. No, I think it's really cool. Yeah, it's the journalism, like you said, yeah, I think your Glucks, your Bianchi is definitely kind of, but I feel like you assist, I think, that conversation, in
Yeah.
the social media space so much where it's kind of, I wish there was like another term to say, but I feel it's there's
Yeah. I get what
definitely
you mean.
a,
Yeah.
a part of that to where um you assist there. It's and I was trying to think while you're talking too. There's a couple other guys that I know are other journalists for um, like smaller outfits. And I'm all the names are escaping me right now. But it's so. But what is it like? What is it like to have interactions with Jeff Glocks and other publications, other journalists, other guys that cover the sport, media that covers the sport? I think that's the right term there.
It's very cool. Like I feel very fortunate to have been able to have those kind of interactions. But I would say it's like as cool as it is intimidating. To just kind of be, one day I like when Jeff Gluck followed me, I was like at work, just kind of minding my business. And it was like Jeff Gluck followed you, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's a thing now. So yeah, very flattering. But then the couple of times that I've gotten a retweet from like a bigger account, it's like, oh, this is really cool, but also, okay, well, now a lot of people are going to see this. And so like the engagement's going to go up and my phone might blow up a little bit. Uh, and so, it's social media at the end of the day. You never know what people are going to say.
Yeah.
And it's cool to get engagement, but it's also scary. So, um, no, overall it's a positive, and I feel very lucky to have been able to have those kinds of interactions online. But yeah, it's intimidating too, you know.
Yeah, well, hopefully most of your interactions are positive, and the bad ones you kind of be like, ah, they can just,
Yeah,
they don't, that's fine. They can say what they want to say, but I stick with the
no,
positive
yeah,
ones.
it's mostly good, but every now and then someone's like, "This graph is dumb." I'm like, "That's not true." But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just dumb to them because they couldn't make it. It's like, oh,
yeah,
no, I think it's really cool. I think when I started seeing the YouTube, the social media space, like I'm not as consistent as I'd like to be trying to be. So I feel like there are some days where some weeks where I go in ways where I'm like, posting or really going into like some of these that stuff that you post, and I might go like 2 weeks before I'm like, oh, what has he posted in the last 2 weeks since I haven't been on Twitter in the last 2 weeks? And it's always
yeah,
really neat to see how you do it, different ways you break it up.
yeah,
It's just really cool. And kind of with that, I feel like NASCAR has kind of gained, more stat categories over the last few
yeah,
years. We're not just talking top 10s, top 20s, we're talking average starting position, average finish position, average running position. I think
yeah.
is really cool. And you've definitely
Mhm.
done a lot of stuff with that, the running position. But and you have to find the right stuff to really get that data. You shared a site that I'm like, oh yeah, I can finally see this a little more. And I know Ski.
Yeah,
I think Ski kind of posts some stuff when he does like all
yeah,
his
Jason's
stuff,
great. Yeah.
post the race and stuff. But are there any categories that you kind of prefer over others when it comes to NASCAR stats?
There's a few. I definitely try to stay away from just like top five, top fives, top tens, pretty much anything that you could see on like racing reference or driver averages. I try to the extent I can, show some different stats. So for example, like I think lap sled gets a little bit overweighted by people. Especially because like if SVG leads two complete road courses, he might only lead like 160, 200 laps, depending on which races they are. And you could lead 400 laps at Bristol, not even win, but like you still have more laps led on the season than SVG. And those are two very different performances. So
Yeah.
I think laps led is one of those where I try to go either by like percentage of laps led or average percentage of laps led. I think that tends to tell a bit of a truer story, especially the deeper you get into the season.
Hmm.
Like you mentioned, average running position is a big one that I've tried to highlight, especially in terms of average finish.
Yeah.
That's why I post like those average finish versus average running position graphs every so often, just because you see two guys with the same average or completely different average finishes who have been running roughly the same, and that's when you can actually say like, okay, clearly there's something I'm missing if I'm just looking at the box score.
Right.
And with NASCAR stats in particular, like there's so much context that you have to take into it.
Yes.
Guys finish races even though they were like junked in the first couple laps and they just kind of wheeled around. So even though they were running at the finish, they didn't DNF. Like that's not a race you can really take into account. Equipment obviously matters, and like a what do you say, like a 15 an average running position, a 15th in a Spire car is not the same as that in like a Hendrick car. In a Spire car, that's very impressive. In a Hendrick car, we might be punching below our weight a little bit. So so much context matters, and I think average running position is one of those that gives the context that we don't have readily available on most sites so far. So those are like two of the big ones that I like.
Yeah, yeah. No, context is everything with any stat, really, when it comes down to it. But I
Yeah.
feel like NASCAR, you really have to have that frame of reference. I like to finish. I mean, I think Blaney was probably one of the best examples of this year of that
Yeah.
average running and average finish. Like his average finish wasn't great for until like 5 or 6 races before the playoffs. That you
Yeah.
pointed out, and so it's just like, yeah, it can tell a better story. So I always loved when you updated that, especially when you broke it down by certain tracks. I was like, this is all about the speedways, because I
Yeah.
mean, the speedways are
Mhm.
just like, I think speedways just throw all the stats off. It's like, oh yeah,
Exactly.
I have
Yeah.
five
Yeah.
top
The
tens, but
track
three
match
came out of
matters.
speedway,
Yeah.
super speedway,
Exactly.
or excuse me, drafting tracks now.
Drafting tracks. Yeah.
The fact that we, and again, the newer NASCAR fan of side of you is I think is cool just because of you have a different perspective of someone like me, whereas I've been in and out of the sport a couple times in my life, but I grew up
Mhm.
with senior, and then that transferred to junior, and Harvick started his career and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To where it's like it was always just Daytona and Talladega, maybe Michigan. You could kind of throw in
Yeah.
there, or in Fontana when that was around. But now it's kind of like, yeah, Atlanta's a super speedway. Atlanta's a drafting track. It's like, what? When I got
Yeah,
back into the
it's
sport just a couple years ago, I'm like, what did I miss?
yeah, yeah, and it's funny, like, when I started collecting data too, now that it's considered a super speedway, because I have, like, a way to, tag all of the tracks, like, for what track type they are, and all of them have been just one the whole time pretty much, from what I can tell, and then Atlanta, I have to go in and make that edit, like, if it's after 2022, we have to consider it a super speedway, and if it's before that, it's an intermediate, so,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a fun little, like, quirk.
I think it's cool. I mean, I think at first I kind of got hung up with that a little bit, but now I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
all right, I guess I'll accept it, and it does it, and it's probably one of the best races we have all year, and
Yeah.
you
I mean,
know,
the racing is good, so hard to complain when the racing's good.
yes, yes, and we don't always get that how we want it. So yes, yes, we can't
Yeah.
complain when we do get it. Um, so you mentioned you kind of we kind of like other categories over like top tens, top fives, top 20s. Do you
Mhm.
think tracking top fives, top 20s, that stuff? Do you think that's worth it anymore?
Um, I mean, I think in the aggregate, they could be. To me, they don't say an awful lot. Like for example, we can go back to like Ryan Blaney. Like at the beginning of the season, you look at his stats, and he probably didn't have many tens and top 20s. I don't remember off the top of my head in the first, or actually, I do. He only had like 8 in the first half of the season.
Hmm.
Um, but anyone who was watching knows that he was running way better than top 10 than only let me reword that. Anyone that was watching knows that like his speed was way better than just 8 out of 18 top 10s.
Yeah.
So like I said, it has to be taken with context. To go back to like the Spire host of our or like Spire Hendrick example, like if Bowman only has 2 top 10s in 10 races, probably not great. But with like a Hocevar, Justin Haley, like that's probably one of their better stretches of the season.
Hmm.
Or like if Cody Ware has 4 top 10s in a year, like that's pretty good, you know? Exactly. So, like he had a career season, and so did Rick Ware. So again, with context, I think they can be helpful. But there's so much attrition that happens in the sport. At the end of the day, like also finishing third and finishing 10th are two very different things, but they still count as a top 10 at the end of the day. How much better is a 10th place finish versus an 11th place finish, realistically?
Right.
One doesn't get you in that top 10 category, but it's roughly the same day. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think they're worth tracking and people will always look to them. And I think in the aggregate of a career, they probably will tell you a pretty good story of how good this driver was at getting a good finish. But in small samples, I don't think they say an awful lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're talking about you're talking about graphs, talking about stats. Any other
Mhm.
stats outside of like I think my favorite from you is like the comparison of the average finish, average and average running position. Any other
Mhm.
stats you really like to show graphically? Another one that just popped in my head that I really like that I like of yours is kind of going back to the top 10, top 20 is like how I
Mhm.
think if I have this correctly, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think is like percentage of a driver's laps run within the top 5 or top 10 or top 20.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that was
Yeah,
cool,
that's
especially
one
early
that I like.
season.
Yeah, that's one that I like posting, like showing the what is it, like top 3, 5, 10, and 20. Like how
Yeah.
many laps are they spending in there? Yeah, that one's cool. The running position heat map that I've posted before, I enjoy that one. I think that one's cool in the way that it allows you to see where are drivers running, like where are they spending their time on track.
Mhm.
Um, that's one that I had a lot of fun making. Anything that breaks up into track types, I'm always really I enjoy looking at those and kind of seeing like, you'll have your Chase Elliott's and Christopher Bells who are like pretty consistently like at the top for all of them, or even like Chris Buescher, like
Mhm.
seeing them like be pretty good across the board, and then seeing like for example like Kyle Larson this year, like
Mm.
before the Roval was having a terrible season on road courses, and so it's funny seeing him like top of the bunch of intermediate shorts terrible year on road courses for some reason, and then like competent at super speedways.
Yeah,
So yeah, anything that breaks up like into track types, I like looking at those too.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool. That's
at
cool.
this point, I've also just done so many, like I kind of forget them a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah. That was cool. No, I always look forward to, like I said, if I don't get on Twitter for a week or so, you're like always one of the first guys I go to. And it's like, oh, what's he posting last week or two? I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Appreciate that.
Do you think any of this data that we have, the newer stat categories that we have, basketball, I think is a great comparison here. We always try to use stats in basketball to say this
Mhm.
era was better than another, or I'm not going to approach I'll throw out LeBron versus MJ. It's like, well, the different eras, you can't always compare those
Yeah.
guys, and people we still do, of course. Do you think any of the new data that we have in NASCAR can help us kind of compare eras? Especially, maybe that's a tough question for you since you're kind of a newer fan, but I feel like
Yeah.
we've had so many different cars in the last 15 years. I feel, pretty much since the playoffs all started. They change every few years, but is there anything out there that we can help kind of say, not really the SVG versus Gordon on road courses, but anything else that
Yeah.
we can say as a whole? It's like, yeah, these stats could really help us, you know, pick out eras.
I don't know, honestly. I think especially with NASCAR, it's so interesting how the cars have changed so much and they affect what a dominant race looks like, you know? Like if you look at the next gen alone, the best average finish someone has completed like for a season is somewhere in like the 11 or 12. Whereas before that, it was routine tap guys like Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson putting up like a sub 10 average finish, and they
Mhm.
were like leading the series. Or you could even, I think, I know off the top of my head, there was like one where you could have like less than a sub 10 average finish and still not even be best in the series. But that's more of just that's what the car was. So that doesn't
Right.
mean that these guys are any worse. Like the racing has just changed. There's a little more attrition now. So it's very hard to make any kind of apples to apples comparisons. I know as far as lap data goes, from what I know, it's not really publicly available before 2020. Um, and again, if we were to use that right now, we have more of a spec car versus in 2010 or even the 2000s. I mean, the gap between the top teams and the bottom teams
Yeah.
are just ridiculously different. So um, I do think that's kind of the beauty of sports, regardless. Like you just have to argue about the eras with your eyes because there's no good way to quantify it.
Yeah.
And it keeps us talking and it keeps us entertained. So yeah, if there's any stat, I don't know if I have the math skills to actually be able to take all of these things into account and put together some kind of objective metric.
Yeah,
For
it's
people
got to
to
be
do.
hard. It's got to be hard. Probably one of the,
Yeah.
just because, yeah, the different cars, and again, I mean, I feel like every era has always had a really good crop of talent, and some of these
Yeah.
guys, Hamlin, Harvick, they spanned a couple of those eras, which I think is
Hmm.
kind of cool. So I think that might be I don't know. In my mind, that's like, maybe we can kind of compare. It's like, hey, Harvick held his own in this era against these guys and still held his own. So I mean, Harvick's obviously one of the best guys we've seen out there, and
Yeah.
especially after he had to fill in for that'll always be like one of those core memories for me of like Harvick had to fill in after Senior's death so quickly, and he wasn't really even
Yeah.
ready for the big
Hmm.
spotlight, and he showed up, he showed up and showed out, for everything, all the pressure was on him. And I mean,
Yeah.
now we can look back at his career and be like, wow, Harvick was really good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing. Like you think about Harvick and SHR, like in the next gen era, his stats were like career worse, but he was wheeling the hell out of that car. And
Yeah,
especially once we saw what SHR looked like after he was gone, like we realized that he was really getting everything out of it. So
yeah,
yeah, it's just tough. There's so many I know that in the past there's been like a peer, like uh I forget what the acronym is, but it was a metric that tries to adjust for like equipment and just
gotcha.
get a gauge of like what the driver is contributing to that car's speed. I'm sure we can use things like that, but yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and even talking about that too makes me feel really bad for Kyle Busch. Talking about guys that have spanned a couple different eras. It's like we
Yeah.
know Kyle Busch can handle a car, but it's just like,
Hmm.
man, maybe this car threw him that much for a loop, and now unfortunately he's an RCR instead of a top organization, and that
Exactly.
probably
Yeah.
is a contributing factor to everything too. And it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
exactly. Kyle Busch is one of those really interesting ones. Like he says that this car doesn't really suit his driving style. And it makes sense if you spend 20 years in one car and you get thrown into something completely different. Like it's hard to adjust. Obviously, some have done it better than others, but he was still good at JGR. They came out swinging with RCR, won like 3 races in the first half of the
mhm,
season, and then
yeah,
who knows what's happened since then. But yeah, really interesting case study happening with Kyle Busch right now
yeah,
because the car doesn't have speed a lot of weeks, but he also spins out a lot. He gets in wrecks a lot, so
yeah,
something's happened over there. I don't know the guy, but
yeah, yeah. Same.
something's
You know,
going on. Yeah,
it's well, and he's he kind of falls in that category of I think of Hamlin to where at first his a lot of his career, people didn't like him. Everybody was down on him, and
Mhm.
didn't like him for his attitude. And people kind of finally came around on him later in his career, and now it's kind of like it's tough to watch for him. It's tough to watch.
Yeah,
Like if you're a fan of him, or even a semi fan of him, it's like, man, that's just tough to watch a guy that dominated all series. All three
yeah,
series. In his heyday. So
yeah. I agree.
yeah. Oh, let's get into some playoff talk. Um, We are at the start of round 8, or of the round of 8, I should say. It's all of the big 3 represented in these final 8 drivers.
Mhm.
Does it bother you that we don't have any small teams represented in these final 8 drivers?
Um, Not really. I wouldn't say so. I think ultimately, like the 8 best drivers of the season, or all of the drivers that have made it this year, are probably in the top 10 for the most part of like
Mhm.
the season. If you just looking at the eye test, I mean, if we think about the most likely candidates that missed were like 2311 with Reddick and Bubba Wallace. I think Bubba definitely has the talent to make it to the round of 8, but objectively, he hasn't been a top 8 car this year.
Right.
Tyler Reddick, something's been off there since the start of the season. I mean, Bubba Wallace was number 1 at that team for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, and so you think about Trackhouse and like Spire, some of these other guys that have been known to play spoiler, and I don't think any of them have really been good enough to say yes, they were one of the top 8 drivers this year. And so yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think underdog stories are cool, but also what makes them cool is that usually they're like few and far between. So,
Yeah.
um, I
I
like I said, they're teams that I root for, and I think they definitely have the potential to be a top 8 car, and I'd love to see them pull it off. But ultimately, I think the best cars are in contention to be champion, and that's what I look for in a format.
yeah, no, I think having all 8 of these drivers, the fact that Logano's there and that it's an odd year,
Yeah,
the Bianchiism there,
yeah, yeah.
it's so I'll actually find it funny if he gets to the championship 4 or it, again. There's another thought I had there, but well, it might come up again.
I mean, he probably will. He always finds a way.
I
So
mean,
we'll see.
these tracks suit him almost as good as just about anybody outside of probably his teammate.
Yeah, yeah.
So that
It's gonna
should
be
be,
interesting.
Vegas will be very interesting to see. If he does bad in Vegas, I think that might put him behind a little bit. But then you get the wild
Yeah,
card of Dega, and I mean, and
that's why and Penske have been great at these drafting tracks, so he'll
mhm,
probably have a good shot there if he can stay out of trouble.
yeah,
Because last year they clinched, what was it, round of 12 into round of 8 with Atlanta, right?
I think
Um,
so. Yeah,
he got us
yeah,
round of 12. Yeah, so and also like playoff Joey's just different. Uh,
yeah.
and it's kind of a shame, like we don't see that during the regular season anymore. I don't know if they like just kind of sandbag until the playoffs or what's happening, but clearly he's able to run up top. I'd love to see it more, but yeah.
I'm wondering if they just experiment at certain tracks a little bit more than maybe other teams, where other teams play it safe and they're like, "Hey, we know where
Mhm,
we're good. We know where we're very nearly unbeatable." That's where I
mhm.
kind of come from with that because I think we said in other sports too, where I think of basketball. I think is probably ultimate as like we know these teams are good, but they're kind of like, we have a long grind. We're gonna do well where we need to do well, and we'll experiment with lineups and different things. And I kind of just wonder if they
Exactly, yeah.
try to do that. We were talking about eras too. I think this playoff era, which has caused so much consternation the last 2 years, which might be overblown. Whatever. I don't know. We'll talk about
Yeah.
that here in a little bit too. But I have a feeling it's like again, Logano, playoff Joey is playoff Joey.
Yeah.
He knows how to deal and with the format. And you got to use the format to work for you. If you understand the format, you
That's
understand what you got
good.
to do. Hamlin understands the format very well. He knows how many points he wants at the first race or
Hmm.
first two if he doesn't have a good track in a group. I remember him
Yeah.
saying last year, it's like, yeah, I want to have like 65 points after the first round, and I'll figure out how to get that
Yeah.
in those races if I have a bad race
Yeah,
kind of
that's why
thing.
he ran at the back at Talladega, right?
Hmm.
He said he was points racing, trying to get out of trouble and just earn like 20 something was his bar. And then,
Yep.
yeah, it's
That worked.
interesting seeing how all these guys play it. Say what you want about the format. I have my own thoughts, but I do think it does bring out some interesting strategies from guys, and it is interesting to see what they prioritize.
Yeah, no, yeah, the stage points format during the season. You mentioned Bubba. I feel like one of the things that kept him higher in the standings because they did points race a lot of stages. They won.
Yeah, they
They
were like
won Indy.
like the whole season. Yeah.
They won Indy to do what they needed to do to get that official
Hmm.
qualification, but they still ran well where they needed to, and took chances where they needed to, and he's probably like the one guy I'm like, oh man, it would have been great to see him, but
Yeah.
there's something to be said. It's nice to see like the best drivers are the final eight here, and it's little room
Yeah.
for error. Like one little mess up, even a top 15 at this point could just be,
Hmm.
detrimental. you know,
Yeah, and it's so tight coming in. I like,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's super tight coming in. So
the
if one of them gets involved in a wreck or just blows up early in a race, it's gonna shape things up really interesting. And again, we've got Talladega in there, so
yeah, and I mean
hard
I
to see
feel
them
like
see
anything
what
can happen at Martinsville too. Like, I know,
Yeah,
we won't get
Julia.
into other Hail Melon, but still, it's like they beat and bang on each other, and these cars don't
Mhm.
break easily.
Yeah.
um, so is your championship four still intact from the beginning of the playoffs?
It is, yeah. I filled out a bracket. I was perfect into the round of 12, and then I was wrong on Joey and Briscoe getting left out.
Gotcha.
Um, Although I just kind of went based off of history. I think like I did like a really small model where I did like average points by track type and then just kind of tallied it up going forward. I think had I gone strictly on the eye test, I could have talked myself into Briscoe top 8 because
Hmm.
he's been fantastic this year. Logano, I think I still would have counted out. So good for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my final four, I think I know I've got Denny, I've got Blaney winning it, and then I've got Larson and Byron. I think that's my final four.
Gotcha. I think my final four I had swapped out. I did not have Larson, but I had Byron, I had Blaney, and I had no, sorry, I did not do Hendrick in the final four.
Interesting.
I did Hamlin and Briscoe with or maybe I did. Sorry, I can't. Yeah, no, yeah, I did do a Hendrick. I did Byron, Hamlin, Briscoe, and Blaney, and I had Blaney winning it all
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. And I could totally see it. Again, I think Briscoe is like sneaky, could be an upset this year. Like if he gets to Phoenix, he has a real chance.
Yeah.
I still think you're racing against Penske if a Penske car gets there, um, but yeah, I think Briscoe's a sleeper, so it'll be really interesting to see if they can get their way into the final four because I think they're like a true contender at that point.
Yeah. So in kind of going through these organizations, are you do you like sticking with Larson as your Hendrick guy coming out, or do you think there's another Hendrick driver that's likely to make it out of the eight into the final four?
Um, I mean, I can see it going either way. Like the three of them have been pretty solid at Martinsville. I think Elliott and Byron will definitely have the leg up at Talladega. Although Larson's been much better. Like he won a stage at Talladega earlier this year.
Hmm.
Um, and he's definitely shown some improvement on the drafting tracks. So it'll be interesting. I still favor Elliott or Byron if one of them were to like win their way in through Talladega. I think at Martinsville it'll be tight. Just kind of depends on who hits that day.
Right.
Um, Las Vegas, I know has been tough for Elliott.
Yes.
So if they're not able to fix that, that might put them in a hole early on. So I think I'm still okay with Larson. I think I'm the least high, the lowest on Elliott making it. And I
Mm,
think Larson and Byron, like, we're just gonna see how the craziness plays out.
yeah.
Because I would have said they were a lock last year, and then Larson ends up missing. So anything can happen. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. Anything. Yeah. Anything there. Yeah. I feel. I mean, I feel like same with those guys. Byron's really good at Martinsville, and they all seem to know
Mhm.
what they're doing at Talladega. It's all against Penske. So yeah, I was just curious, if where your championship four was, if you wanted to, if you were like maybe I change my championship four now based on who's actually there or not. But um,
Yeah, I think I would consider taking Briscoe over one of the two Hendrick cars, and it'll just depend on my mood if I were to change something. Um, but I feel pretty solid about my four. I
yeah,
think Larson is maybe the one I'm most nervous about. I feel like we haven't seen him have that like top end speed at the ovals
yeah,
since Charlotte. Really, it's been very few and far between. Like I posted in one of my graphs, like he came out hot with so many laps led in the first half, then he has just over 100 in the second half of the season, which is just so uncharacteristic for that team.
hmm
So yeah, we'll see. They started hot and just haven't really seemed to find that rhythm. So
yeah,
a win in Ewan might be tough. Like I don't know if Larson's going to be the favorite at Martinsville or Las Vegas coming in, but he could have easily been at the beginning of the season. So
right, yeah.
weird
No,
situation with him.
I mean, I feel like all these drivers can have the ability to do well on all these tracks. Elliott might be the
Yeah.
weaker of the drivers at Vegas. And I mean, I don't outside of Briscoe, I don't know if Logano's won at Martinsville or not, but honestly I feel like outside of like Elliott and Briscoe, I think just about the rest of the remaining drivers have won at Martinsville. But I have a horrible memory, so I could be missing someone else there too of the
Yeah, I
final
can't
eight.
remember off the top of my head either. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this round of eight will be very interesting. Again, the slightest
Hmm.
mistake, will be could be costly, and you get to throw
Yeah.
Talladega in the middle, but that's just nuts.
Yeah.
So and we'll stick with the playoff. We'll stick with the format a little bit. I wanted to hit some like hot topics with you a little bit.
Sure.
So the two like format related questions for you for the playoffs. I'd love to get your take here. Let's say the basic format kind of stays the same, where we have the elimination races and everything. Uh, do
Mhm.
you do you like just one race for the championship round, or do you want to see the championship round expanded to more races?
No, I think it definitely needs to be more. If we're gonna stay in a world where there's gonna be playoffs, if we keep winning, you're in. If we keep the elimination rounds, I think at the very least you need a larger sample size for the final. Just I think NASCAR, like we've mentioned it, like there's just so much attrition, and trying to have a kind of Super Bowl Game 7 moment just doesn't hit the same.
Hmm
I think for the most part, it hasn't happened, but like you could have all four cars wreck in the same wreck halfway through the race, and then like it hasn't
Oh my
happened,
word!
but it could, and I think
Yeah.
that's just such a mess, and that's a terrible. Um, I think a format that has even that possibility is a flawed format. Um, and so, yeah, I think a one race sample is too small. NASCAR is interesting in that like different teams are better at different tracks than others. So this whole year, it's been like if a Penske car makes it to Phoenix, like you're just gonna have to be Penske because they've got it figured out. And you can make the argument like, okay, well, you're Hendrick and JGR. You guys have probably the most money out of everybody. Figure it out. But on the other hand, it's like I feel like that's a competition error or a big flaw in the competition. And I think the beauty of NASCAR is having drivers who can work their way around so many different track types and so many different tracks. And so allowing them to exhibit that to win a championship would mean so much more. I think if you can have like a, a Phoenix, Homestead, and then whatever third kind of oval, or even I don't know, throw in a road course or no, don't do that. Don't do that for the championship. But just allowing them to actually be consistent over 3 races, and then even then, I think 3 races really isn't enough. If you pick any 3 race sample from the season and just rank drivers by their average finish, like you would have 3 different champion or like 20 different champions in all of these 3 race samples because so much can happen. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm pretty anti playoff formats in general. I think expanding the championship round at least a little bit would be better, competition wise, but that's just me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and speaking of like full format, would you be on board with, keeping with some type of playoffs, or do you just want to see the playoffs kind of just go away then?
I'm a 36 race guy. I think, I mean, also, first, not even from a sport perspective, but just to put in 36 weekends, 38 weekends of the year into traveling, into going on track, all of the work that goes throughout the week. I mean, these guys give up 75% of their year to compete for this championship. And you can have it come down to things like a couple untimely cautions and a wreck in 3 out of the 36 weeks. I think it's just bad for sport. I don't think it's fair to the teams and all the effort that they put in to show up to track week in and week out. So yeah, I'm big 36 points. I think whoever produces the best body of work throughout the year should be the person that gets rewarded. That said, I do think if we want to do 36 points, the point system should also be updated.
Yes. Yes,
Because I
please.
think it's a mess right now. Having it linear makes no sense. Yeah, something not as extreme, but something in the more like F1 shape where a good
Yes.
finish, because then you have less people who just survive and avoid bad finishes. Like you should still be rewarding for being able to get the good finishes. So I'm okay with a world, for example, where the point system has SVG finishing in the top 13. Because even though maybe like he hasn't been the best, like he still managed to win 5 races, and
Yeah.
that's not nothing.
Right.
And he should be rewarded for that, and that should be reflected in the points. He's not going to be a champion just by doing that because he's still got to be able to perform consistently.
Right.
But 5 wins is not nothing, and so I'm okay with a system that I think. I don't know if you follow Stu, but he does like the Mario Kart points.
I came across that a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and he updates that weekly, and I think that definitely shows like that kind of exponential curve tells a more true story of who's been the best and who hasn't. And it's tricky adding stage points in there because I like stage points. I think they're good. I'm okay with getting rid of stage cautions, but I think rewarding people for running well also makes sense. Again, and Denny Hamlin has said this before, like you can lead 499 out of 500 laps. If you don't reward stages, you wreck that final lap and you come away with 1 point. Like it's hard to race for 500 miles, and people should be rewarded for being good at points throughout the race.
Yeah.
But yeah, long way to say 36 race points with the points adjusted so that front end means way more.
Yeah, no, I did right before the playoffs started. I kind of went into kind of my take that I've been trying to work on all year, and I wanted to get it out earlier. And I think even after that podcast, I was kind of like, I think I could refine a few more things. So I might kind of re-release that with a few modifications after I'm kind
Yeah.
of trying to track some things. But I'm with you on increasing the points. I mean, I don't, yeah, because with 40, I was gonna say 43. Wow, really going old school. With
Yeah.
36 to 40 drivers every week, it's I'm not smart enough with the math to do like, F1 has it separated by this many points,
Mhm.
per spot or whatever, and like translating that to NASCAR, but it's also 40 versus 20. But I'm with you in the F1 model. The F1 movie kind of changed that for me. I've never really
Mhm.
watched F1.
Yeah.
I kind of understand it. I kind of understand the concepts, very much more team oriented and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
I was looking up like their point system in IndyCar, which I think is very comparable to F1. I'm just like, if we're trying to grow the sport, gain viewers, gain eyeballs. People are watching IndyCar more. People are watching F1 a lot more, and a lot, internationally, especially people prefer F1.
Hmm.
And there's arguments for both there. But I feel like, NASCAR is just so antiquated where it's like, oh yeah, 1 point. Like, no, no.
Yeah,
Again, I
no,
kind of want to retool, probably need to retool so I could explain it easily, but like every 5 or 10 positions, like, hey, you're separated by this, but you jump from a top 15 to a top 10. It's a 10-point
yeah,
increase just from 11th to 10, and then you separate it, and then, I like how F1 celebrates a podium finish. They celebrate the winner, but they celebrate a podium
exactly.
finish too. And I feel like
Or,
NASCAR could do
or
the
even
same.
just getting in the points in the top 10, like with them. And I don't think NASCAR should go this direction per se, but like you're not even guaranteed points every week. And so just finishing in the points is like a huge deal.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's okay. Because like I know people get worried about, oh, I don't want to see drivers points racing. First of all, they already do that. This
Mhm.
format has not stopped points racing. You're never going to get rid of points racing.
Yep.
Um, as long as points are a thing, people are occasionally going to drive in a way that benefits them from points. There's 36 cars on track. Realistically, 26 of them don't have a realistic shot at winning most weeks, and so they're going to drive for points.
Yep.
Things happen where even if you have a good car, like I had an example and it escaped me, but you have a good car, something happens, like you have a bad pit stop, and now you just kind of have to settle for just trying to finish in the top 10, and that'll still be a good day. So
Yeah.
points racing is going to happen, and I think people need to be okay with that. But I think that the position should matter, and like going from 12th to 13th or from 13th to 12th should not have the same point benefit as going from third to second.
Right.
That doesn't make sense. Like
Yeah.
a pass into second means way more than a pass into 12th.
Yeah.
And yet you're only rewarded 1 point for each of those right now. So
Yeah.
I
No,
also haven't sat down to do the math and think
I
what would be perfect. Like I said, and also like I think the winner should just always be guaranteed the most points. I'm okay with that as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's so silly that we see winners have less points than like second and third place.
Yeah, it's like you can finish like fit. I don't know the exact spot, but I feel like if you win like 2 stages and finish fifth, you're almost, if not more points than the race winner. If the race winner didn't do well at stages or
Yeah,
something, it's like,
exactly.
huh?
Yeah, and like if we want to incentivize winning, you don't need to. I think winning you're in is so extreme for incentivizing winning. Just make winning worth more points. And like I said, like that puts SVG in a position like, okay, I'm not gonna win the title, but I can still finish 13th in the top 20, whatever, in the
Mhm.
standings. And that means a lot for my owner points. That means a lot for my team and like how much we win.
Yep.
And those wins should matter and add up.
Yep.
So I know there's got to be a way to do it where wins mean a lot and should be enough to bump you up a couple spots in the standings, but shouldn't just guarantee that now the next 20 whatever races don't matter for you because you're in the playoffs. I
Yeah.
think it's silly.
I'm hoping at the awards show they announce something completely different for next year, or at least something different. It doesn't
They're
seem
hinting
like.
towards it, so we'll see.
Yeah. Say that again.
I said they've been hinting towards it, so we'll
Yeah.
see. It definitely sounds like something's going to change. And
Yeah.
at first, it just sounded like a playoff change, but now Steve O'Donnell's talking about going real old school. So 36 points looks like it might be back on. We'll see.
It's crazy. No, the teardown. We've mentioned Gluck and Bianchi a ton on this, and I mean,
Yeah,
I love those guys. Just their banter together, but just their minds for the sport, the way they just cover the sport, so awesome. But I mean, the fact that I thought it was cool, like that Bianchi was kind of like, you know, I don't. It's not my preferred, but I'm kind of coming around in the 36 point or the 36 races format a little bit more. And Gluck was kind of reporting from the stuff that he was a part of that it wasn't an idea until Martin brought it up, and then it was off the table, and now it's maybe back on the table. We go,
yeah,
or we, I would personally, I think they'd make a lot of people happy if they went back too close to the original chase for the playoffs. But like do
yeah.
like one elimination race. Um, but it seems like at least of a couple weeks ago. But again, like you said, Steve O'Donnell's kind of like put more stuff back out there in the world. But where Bianchi, oh, I think he's on Durban Moncler, where he was kind of like, don't be surprised if it's 4 races in the championship round. He just kinda drops that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
when
yeah,
I was listening to that, I was like, I literally just put that on my little tiny podcast that nobody's probably gonna hear, but, like, I literally just said that 4 races in the championship round would be perfect. 2 elimination
yeah.
races. I don't know, part of me is kinda like I try to pull from, like, a lot of people different ideas, like, I'm very much with, Hamlin on if you're gonna do the elimination races, don't reset the points after each elimination race.
So
I
bad.
get it for resetting at the playoffs because you need to separate those win
Mhm,
and ends that hardly didn't do anything in the playoff, during the season for points. Because I mean, oh,
mhm.
Busher, I think had like what two, three more, 200 or 300 more points than like Dylan or a couple other guys, maybe an SVG, and he wasn't in at
Yeah,
all. So it's like you got to separate, that the win and ends. But like that should be the only reset, and just let the playoffs, go through. I haven't updated an
yeah,
Excel sheet for a while, but I know I need to update it to see like, oh, would this have been different? But
yeah, I think the resets are such a disaster, frankly. I think they're, like, anti-competitive, they're hard to follow, they're very confusing,
yes,
um,
the hard to
and
follow
so
is the
it's
perfect point there.
yeah, going back to, like, I've heard people say that apparently the reason that we do, like, 1 point per position is because it's easier for the fans to follow, but I'm like, the playoff points aren't easy to follow. The resets aren't easy to follow. Winning you're in gets convoluted. Because then you have people like Austin Dillon winning, but then they don't get to participate because they didn't do it right. Or SVG because he wasn't even a full-time driver, so he's not eligible. Like there's just all these wrinkles in the rules that like it just takes so much effort to fully understand what's going on. Even
Yeah.
even me, like I sometimes shy away from doing like how many points do they need or have they needed in the past because I'm not fully confident I'm doing the math right sometimes because like it takes so much time to make sure that like it is perfect.
Yeah, I bet. I
Just 'cause
bet.
there's so many layers, it's so much to understand. So to that point, I say I don't think it's the end of the world to switch from the 1 point per position because it may be a little bit hard to follow at first while we get used to it. But I promise it's going to be so much easier and more intuitive than all of these resets that
Yeah.
we have now.
Yeah, just give the winner 100 points, the next person 10 points less, next person 10 points less, and then make that
Better.
margin
Yeah.
a little bit smaller every so that's
Yeah.
we just solved it over, no problem.
We're adults. We'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so couple more things I wanted to touch on before we say goodbye for the day, but we talked a little bit about the different cars and everything in NASCAR history. Where where do you where do you settle yourself on this next gen car? Do you think it's time to kind of move on, or do you think some changes? And this is maybe an antiquated question from when we first talked about doing this interview, but 'cause I
Yeah.
think was it who was on Junior's podcast the other I think today to that was like, oh yeah, we're going to increase the horsepower, or yesterday we're going
Yeah.
to
Steve
increase the
O'Donnell
horsepower.
said yesterday
Yeah.
750.
So maybe that helps us stay with this next gen car for a few years. But I mean, do you have any thoughts on the next gen car? I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. One, like they're not going to be able to move on from it in the next couple years. It's just so much money that goes into making a
Mm,
new car from like what they've hinted at. So that's not realistic, I don't think. And it's tricky because I think the intermediate racing has been so good. The the short track racing hasn't been very good, but the tires have been getting better.
mhm.
And so it looks like we might be getting to a place where the racing could be better. And next year with the 750, we'll see if that also helps the short track racing a little bit. Road courses have had, I think, pretty solid races for the most part. There's been some snoozers in there, like I think Watkins Glen for the most part has been okay, but we've had a lot of pretty solid road course races. Again, tires look like they're getting better there too.
Mhm.
The super speedways are tough because they are very entertaining, but they're also kind of a crapshoot. And so there's just a lot of things to consider when we go to a new car. If it's better on short tracks, but it ends up being terrible on intermediates again, is that really a net positive? Like it's going to be very hard to
Right.
make everyone happy and make sure that it races well everywhere. So I think it looks like NASCAR's finally taking the steps to at least try to make it better.
Hmm.
At the places where it's been failing, it looks like the tires are getting better. So I think we should give it a chance for a few more years, or at least a couple more years, see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, the
And
the
with these new
cost thing
changes.
I think is perfect there because yeah, it's got, who knows how much money it takes to develop even, 'cause I mean, develop a car. I
Yeah,
think they're on the car of tomorrow and, in the Gen 6, and I mean, they were talking about the next gen that we have now. They're talking about that and
yeah,
testing that for at least 2 or 3 years, I feel. So yeah, it obviously takes a lot of research and time, and the tires have definitely gotten better on the short track, which was the biggest complaint. But we are seeing that at road courses, Roval, especially. I think we saw the other day. So yeah, I think you can. I think you could fix super speedway racing by throwing an extra stage in there, or you know, making the first 2 stages really short, like, basically fit them in the
yeah,
fuel window, so it's like you're not getting this.
I,
I get the fuel saving, I don't
yeah,
mind it, but it's like, I love it when the teams that are like, "We don't care if we're gonna save fuel or not for a stage or 2.
mhm.
We're going all out. You guys figure out if you're gonna stay up with us or not." And then that's what causes that better racing, but then it's like that 2nd stage is long enough to where it's like, "Well."
Yeah. I also think just getting rid of stage cautions in general could help the racing in so many places. At road courses, you're not forced to flip the stage per se. So you can kind of see some strategies play out. Um, I don't know off the top of my head how much it would help at like the drafting tracks, for example, but I think it could. So I think just overall allowing the races to play out without those cautions could make the car look better than it actually is, just because you're letting the drivers actually just race it out.
Yeah, yeah. One final question. We've talked about SVG a little bit. Obviously, road course domination. Pretty much ever since he's been in the sport, won the Nagano Chicago. That's cool. You got to see that him when
Yeah.
Nagano Chicago. Obviously, 5 of the 6 this year. Do
Hmm.
you like that we have this many? Well, I think we're going from what 6 to 5 for next year, but I don't
Hmm.
know. Where do you fall in the street course, road course, category? Do you think there's too many? Not enough?
Definitely at the very least enough. I think 6 is probably a good max. I think it's great to have more than two. So I think a lot of people like old school. There was just two, but I think a really cool thing about NASCAR is how, and we said this earlier, like why I'm so for, at the very least, having more tracks in the final four or in the championship round versus just one. Because to be good at NASCAR, like you have to be good at so many different track types. There's so many different skill sets that you employ that you don't really see in a lot of other series. IndyCar has some of that, but I think that's a strength to be able to have drivers who are good at both.
Hmm.
And I'm biased. I like road courses. I think they're fun. And I'm trying not to let like the SVG dominance change my perception just because oh, it'd be boring to watch him win the next six. Ultimately, I think road course racing has been part of the sport from its grassroots, like when they ran the beach course at Daytona back in the day. Road courses have always been part of NASCAR, and I think having them make up a decent portion of the schedule. Also, keep in mind, like even at six, that's only 1/6 of the season
Hmm.
of a 36, 38 race season. So
Yeah.
it's a very small portion. I think having them too close together this year jaded a lot of people,
Hmm.
like having what was it, Chicago and Sonoma back to back with Mexico like 3 weeks before that.
Hmm.
So I think if you space them out, sprinkle them in every now and then, I think they're entertaining. I'm okay with going down to like four, maybe six. We don't need all six.
Yeah. Well, we don't need the Roval.
They've been good. Yeah, we can kick the Roval. And, like they're gonna do San Diego. They did Mexico this year. I think having road courses in the sport has also allowed NASCAR to expand, which I think is a good
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
And so continuing to have that as an integral part of what the sport is now helps to grow. I think it helps the drivers develop, and it makes them more interesting. And so I think it's cool.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, well, at least next year we know that at least we have one person that's going to be competing with SVG for the top spot in those races, and Connor Zilic.
That's gonna be interesting. Yeah, if he
That's
can
gonna be
pull
so
it.
much fun, I think.
Yeah, if he figures out the next gen as fast as he did that Xfinity car, he's gonna be one to watch.
Yeah.
Like I said, we'll see. Trackhouse also just on these ovals have been, I think, a tick off from what we're used to seeing from them. But we also like when Ross hits on his setup, like he's as good as anyone else in the field. So yeah, Connor's gonna be fun to watch next year.
Yeah, he definitely is. He definitely is. Daniel, thank you for joining the pod today. Really
Yeah,
appreciate doing this with me. Getting to know you a little bit more. Really appreciate the work you do in the space. I think that's gonna just increase for you. Very visible. A lot of different publications and different people. Really sharing your work. So I think it's definitely appreciated, and it's always fun to see when I see like a conversation between you and a few other other media people out there that kind of like just having sharing
yeah,
ideas, or like, hey, what if we did this or that, or did someone have this missing data? Like
yeah.
the guy that keeps coming to mind. I can see the profile picture of him on Twitter, but I keep forgetting his name.
Seth?
Seth, yes.
Yeah, Seth Ager. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate following him too, and I think I know at least one or two times where I've kind of picked your guys' brains, like, hey, well, what about this or that? And you both have been very, very helpful, and kind of as I've been trying to approach NASCAR a little bit different way too. Always been a
yeah,
fan for the most part, but it's fun to kind of take the analytical that I wouldn't have really done when I was younger, and kind of apply that, because I don't really have the favorite driver that I used to have, growing up with the Earnhardt's or Harvick even, or Stewart, which is I think
yeah,
is, I like that you said that you didn't really have one either. I think that's honestly great for the sport right now, in a way of, that helps. I think that helps us approach how we want to approach things within the sport, from analytics, stats, and stuff like that. So,
yeah,
so
yeah. Makes it easier to spread the wealth for
yeah,
sure.
yes, it does. Yes, it does. So
Yeah,
thank you again, Daniel. Appreciate you joining. Appreciate everybody watching here, listening to the pod. Thank you for your time. Appreciate any subscriptions, likes, comments, especially. Let us know what your guys' thoughts are on some of the hot topics we discussed for the playoffs, especially going on a couple more races till the end. We both have the same driver winning it, Blaney. I think he's a very popular pick. It seems like Penske or bust when it gets to this point. There's two of them in the playoffs. So, but there's Christopher Bell. He's also good at Phoenix. I don't think we mentioned his name.
yeah.
But
Maybe it was Bell that I had in the final four. No, I don't remember. I'll have to.
we'll
Yeah,
go with what you said. We'll go with what you said.
yeah,
We'll keep that in stone for you. But yeah, I was thinking of that too. That the one guy we didn't mention could be, is pretty good on a lot of these tracks coming up here too. So,
yeah.
but hope everybody watching enjoys the rest of the NASCAR season, and we will see you guys next time.
.com.